So I've been away for a bit and I haven't made a new video in like a week, and it's because I've started my new job. Now, I'm going to have to change my style up a bit. I'm going to have to do these all in one take, which sucks for me because I just don't have the time to edit. It's, what's the time? It's 8:30 nearly here, and I got in at 7 and I have to get up at like 5-ish, so I don't have time to do this, and I want to do some exercise. But the main point of my video today is that I just want to talk about some British politics stuff, but tie it back into American politics. Now, the last couple of days in this country, I actually can't believe what I'm seeing with the corporate media and the so-called impartial media of the BBC in their attacks of Jeremy Corbyn. And what I wanted to link it back to is, I'm going to give you an insight to what it's like here, because if Bernie comes close to winning the Democratic nomination, you can bet the same thing is going to happen in America, because it definitely is. When people are getting this close to power who challenge the entire political system and challenge the status quo, everyone is coming out to smear them. So, I've spoken about this in the past. The anti-Semitism thing with the Labour Party is totally overblown, and it is the media is complicit in spreading these smears against Jeremy Corbyn. Now, that's not to say there aren't people in the Labour Party who are anti-Semitic. I've made videos about how the left can be anti-Semitic and why the Labour Party might have some problems with anti-Semitism. I've made that video and I'll link it in the description. But to think Jeremy Corbyn is an anti-Semite, he's a racist who hates Jews, is ludicrous, for one thing. A guy who's always fought for social justice his whole life. To think that his party will be some sort of like anti-Semitic sort of Nazi party in terms of their policy towards Jews is crazy, but it shows how bad the media have been in handling this stuff, and especially because it doesn't treat Tory racism the same way, whether that's the Windrush scandal. Think about that, the Windrush scandal. They kicked people out of this country because they didn't have the proper documentation from when they moved here when they were kids, and they moved here with their families who came to help rebuild this country after World War II. Kick them out, send them back to Jamaica, send them back to all these ex-colonies of ours, and a lot of them have actually been murdered when they've gone back as well. There's been gay people who've been kicked out during the Windrush scandal who've gone back to these countries and been murdered for being gay and stuff. It's totally ludicrous and racist. And where is the hysteria around this thing? Why aren't the BBC bringing this up all the time? Why aren't the corporate media bringing this up all the time? It's a policy that is deeply racist. And somehow the Tories aren't the racist ones. Not to mention Boris Johnson's numerous racist comments about Muslims, numerous homophobic comments, racist comments about black people. Apparently Jeremy Corbyn is the racist. The anti-racist is the racist. It's like some Orwellian thing where you just don't believe the truth. Don't believe, believe that the racist person is anti-racist and believe that the anti-racist is a racist. It's totally ludicrous. And, the problems really are, it's all about access and who controls the media. Well, the rich people in this country. So the Tories are the rich party, aren't they? They're totally connected to all these people, Murdoch and everyone like that. So they want the access. They're not going to start doing hit jobs on Boris Johnson, are they? Hit jobs on the Conservative Party. It's easy to punch down because what party, what power do left-wing people have? Do we control the media? Are we friends with all these billionaires? Do we have loads of billionaires on our side? No. So we don't have the power. The only power you have is interacting with real people and trying to get them to see, your point of view. But I've said in the past, when the rich control everything, then you control the media, there's no hope for people because you're just being brainwashed every single day. And that gets to my point. The BBC, the last couple of weeks, has been an absolute disgrace. I have been arguing with a lot of people for ages that the BBC is extremely pro-right-wing and pro-Tory, right? And then lately, numerous scandals. So the first one, Boris Johnson messed up when he planted a wreath down at the November 11th Remembrance Ceremony, right? So you probably have in America, I think it's called Veterans Day in America, but if you're in Canada, I know you have the Poppy Day and everything. So every November 11th to mark the end of World War I, and just the general anti-war stuff, now you had like the poppy wreaths, and Boris Johnson put it upside down in 2019, right? So the BBC ran footage of him doing it in 2016, where he did it right? That's kind of hard to understand how that gets through the editorial process, especially when the politicians around him no longer are in power anymore. I think Tim Farron, the leader of the Lib Dems, he's not in power anymore. I think Theresa May was there as well. So who is checking this stuff? Because in my new job, right, I just publish articles and write articles. I still have someone checking it. And if I wrote something that's just obviously not true, and the guy who's been working there a long time would obviously pick it up. So either it's a pro-Tory guy who did the editing and it slipped past the editor, who's just incompetent, or they are both pro-Tory, or the editor is pro-Tory and directed this person to use this footage. Because how does 2016 coverage suddenly pop up in maybe like your folders for Remembrance Day? I just don't buy it for a second. If that was a one-off, okay, you know, maybe given the benefit of the doubt, I wouldn't personally. But then the next thing they did is the audience at a question time panel were laughing at Boris Johnson, right, after a lady asked him a question. The BBC edited out the laughter and said they did it to, because of time constraints, but then they found out the clip wasn't even much quicker. Not any they couldn't run the old one. And that is obvious BBC bias. And then the funny thing is the Tory party have started using that clip, and now the BBC saying that, oh, we don't endorse the Tory party using this clip that we edited and everything. It's totally crazy. And then the final one today, two things. They just put up a video of Boris Johnson eating a scone and putting jam and cream on his scone. And if you don't have scones in America, it's just like this sort of cake thing that British people like. British chavs more like. Anyway, and they just put that up on their front page of the video. So a video that makes him look normal, makes him look all, oh, he's so charming and normal like us. They just put it up on their page, right? The same page that always posts about how Jeremy Corbyn is a racist. The same page they post all the smears against Labour. And then, another thing they did, there's a guy called Andrew Neil. You might know him as the guy who grilled Ben Shapiro and owned him for the BBC, right? He's a really hard interviewer. He's also very right-wing. But all the leaders, apparently, signed on to have an interview with him, one-on-one. Jeremy Corbyn went on the other night and obviously had a tough time. This guy is a tough interviewer. Jeremy Corbyn went on because the BBC told him that Boris Johnson was going to do a similar interview the next night. The BBC tweeted yesterday that there hadn't been any agreement with Boris Johnson. So he's the only leader out of all of them. Even Nigel Farage is going on, and Joe Swinson, the leader of the Lib Dems, and Nicola Sturgeon as well. He's not going on because he knows he'll get grilled and it'll look bad. And now Jeremy Corbyn's gone on, got grilled, it's made him look bad. And then, can you see what the problem is? They reassured Jeremy Corbyn, you come on, you might have a hard time, but Boris Johnson's going on too. And for Jeremy Corbyn, he's like, well, I'm going to have a bad time, but this guy's going to eat Boris Johnson alive for the liar he is. And how can the BBC have so many cock-ups that always benefit the Tories? Where are the cock-ups that benefit Jeremy Corbyn? Oh wait, there aren't any, because they aren't cock-ups. It is policy directed from I don't know who, but it's clear the BBC have been in bed with the Conservative government for years now. I've talked about this before. Robbie Gibb ran the Brexit coverage and he ran the 2017 election coverage. Right afterwards, he went and worked as Theresa May's communications secretary in Downing Street, right? And it was found out he was later causing chaos in politics because he was a hard Brexiteer, and people also said that he's the reason Nigel Farage got so much airtime running up to the EU referendum. And that's the thing you've got to realise. People at the top of the BBC, there's no left-wing people, there's no socialists, because you're not getting to the top of the BBC like that. And everyone who runs BBC's politics coverage either has been proven to actually have worked or campaigned for the Tories at some point, or is obviously biased. Laura Kusenberg is the chief political correspondent. She retweeted Piers Morgan the other day. Piers Morgan, who tapped people's phones, who published lies about the Iraq War in his paper, that guy, she retweeted him, and he's saying people should pummel Corbyn in interviews. How is that impartial? How is the person whose taxpayers pay her salary and they pay her to be impartial because that is the remit of the BBC? How can that be okay? How could she be retweeting Piers Morgan like that? And then she was retweeting Dominic Cummings' blog without any criticism. She tagged that Labour guy whose daughter nearly died, and he confronted Boris Johnson about cutting funding for the NHS and said, here he is, tagged him so everyone could go harass him. She should be fired because not only is she not impartial, she is being a terrible journalist. She has no journalistic ethics. But the BBC aren't going to do anything because they're in bed with the Tories. And John McDonnell called them out, and people have called them out on Twitter, but nothing's going to change, so you can't trust them. But what my main point here is it's really ramped up in the last couple of weeks because they are scared Jeremy Corbyn's going to get into power. So all this stuff about anti-Semitism and all this double standard where anti-Semitism, is just everywhere apparently in the Labour Party, but racism isn't in the Tory party. The same party that called Nelson Mandela a terrorist, who backed apartheid in South Africa, the same party with someone like Boris Johnson at its head, the same party that is just, generally racist throughout its history. whether that, and just, you know, awful to whether it's people who are Irish, from the Caribbean, anyone like that. Why would you vote for Conservative if you're from that background? Because you know they discriminate against people who aren't white Christians. And a lot of, you know, I hate that I see a lot of these groups. For example, I've seen these Hindu groups, which are backed by Modi, saying all this shit about Jeremy Corbyn as well. And it makes me sad to see a lot of the Jewish community backing the Tories as well. But there are a lot of Jews who support Jeremy Corbyn, and that goes to the heart of it. You wouldn't get any Jews supporting the Nazis, would you? I bet you couldn't find any examples of prominent Jews backing the Nazis. Maybe there is some cases of someone who's completely sold out, right? But the fact that Jeremy Corbyn has a lot of Jewish support should prove to you he's not an anti-Semite, personally, or the people he's going to put in his government aren't anti-Semites or anything like that. But it's just something they are using to bash them over the head time and time again. And obviously, Jeremy Corbyn's being called an anti-Semite because he's pro-Palestinian. And make no mistake, if Bernie Sanders was not a Jew, he would get the exact same treatment because they're not much different on their stance on Israel. Obviously, Bernie's a bit more supportive. You've seen it in his rhetoric than Jeremy Corbyn is. But at the same time, they're pretty similar. And, you know, you see Ilhan Omar, it's the same thing. Because she's a Muslim person, it's like anti-Semite, anti-Semite. And can I just call out the absolute hypocrisy of fundamentalist Christians in America and right-wing conservative Christians in the UK, part of the group that have persecuted Jewish people for 2,000 years. They're the ones crying about anti-Semitism on the left. And let's not forget, I made my video about cultural Marxism and cultural Bolshevism. That is an anti-Semitic thing that is pushed by the right wing. And it's deeply anti-Semitic. It's tied to Nazi propaganda that they used to carry out the Holocaust. You don't get anyone on the left using cultural Marxism and cultural Bolshevism because they know it's completely anti-Semitic to use those terms. Literally Nazi propaganda and fascist propaganda. Why would anyone on the left be saying that? So that's what my problem is. The right wing are anti-Semites, and just because they support the authoritarian government of Israel doesn't mean they aren't anti-Semites. Look at people like Trump, look at all these Christians, and the Christian support for Israel is anti-Semitic. Again, I made a video on that, didn't I? Talking about they see themselves as the successor to the Jews, and if the Jews don't convert to Christianity on Judgment Day, they're all going to hell. They believe that, and they love Israel because they think it's key to unlocking Armageddon, and a lot of people believe, like Mike Pompeo, is when Iran and Israel go to war, that's going to trigger the end of the world. There isn't anything more anti-Semitic than that. But people like Trump and all these Republicans and all these Tories calling people like Jeremy Corbyn, Ilhan Omar, anti-Semites just for criticising Israel is absolutely ludicrous, and it's complete journalistic malpractice that no one can seem to point this out, right? It's not saying that there's people like Naz Shah in the Labour Party or Ken Livingstone which has said anti-Semitic things. You can still deal with that, and you can still say people like Jeremy Corbyn and Ilhan Omar aren't anti-Semites. It's just ridiculous that you can't have any nuance in these debates. While you let a party that has historically been institutionally racist and still is, you let a party like that skate, scot-free. No one challenges Boris Johnson as racism, really. He seems to get away with it. No one follows up, even when they do ask him these questions. And Americans and American subscribers, just get ready, because if it goes down to Bernie and Biden, that's the final two, get ready for MSNBC, get ready for CNN. They'll be smearing Bernie every single day. They will pull out anything from his past that could be seen as slightly controversial, and they'll be pushing all this propaganda. Make no mistake, because it's happening here in the UK. Our election is in about 2 weeks, and this is what's happening. I think it's 2 weeks to this day. So when you're getting close to, the end of the primary, it's going to happen in America as well, because I don't see Bernie's momentum fading anytime soon. Anyway, this is just a quick video. I do apologise for the quality, because it is just me rambling. I'm very tired. I got some other stuff to do as well. What I'm going to try and do now, in the future, I'm going to record 2 videos on Sunday, properly edit them, and schedule them to go up in the week. So they are going to still be as good as they used to be, but I just thought I haven't uploaded in nearly a week. I got to get something out, because I don't want my channel to start dying. So I just, put this out. And it is something I'm passionate about. Maybe not as, expressed as well as I would like, but, there you go. So if you made it this far, I appreciate you watching. Look out the channel for some new videos. If you want to find me on social media, follow me at The Cavernacle on Twitter and Instagram. Follow me at u/TommyCahill1995 at Reddit. Check out my Patreon if you want in the description. Check out my WordPress blog. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.